Many job searchers can take hours a week for weeks or months at a time to find the correct recruiters that would fit best for them. Having to do manual reach outs via email or phone can take a lot of time. That's why in this video today, I'm going to show you how to be able to automate your lead generating tool to be able to contact thousands of recruiters and send them all your resumes at once. The really cool thing about this build that I'm going to be showing you is that it's actually applicable in many domains and many people that look to do prospecting in a more automated way. So if this is something that interests you, stick around. We'll go over it in this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hope that you enjoy this build. So to jump straight into it, I want to just start by saying that obviously this is my approach to this build. There's always more efficient ways. If you have any alternatives of how you would approach this, go ahead and leave it down in the comments. We'd be very curious to learn. Just to jump straight into it, essentially the way that this is working, high-level overview, is based off of a lead generation tool that I used. I pulled in some leads into a Google Sheet and then essentially just loops over and goes through this workflow while I do so. So just starting off pretty much from the very beginning, what I used is a website called Apify. Apify has a lot of really cool lead scrapers, website scrapers that were made to help people be able to find emails of people that you might be looking for. The way that this one works, you can, if you just go to Apify, now you don't need to pay for Apify, but if you want some more usage ability with these types of scrapers, you can purchase a plan. But this also works on a free plan. You get $5 to start when you sign up. If you search Apollo, which was a typical lead generation tool, Apify doesn't work with Apollo anymore, but they do have a new alternative called Leads Finder. You can see that you can scrape 1,000 leads with just $1.50. Now again, when you start with Apify, you get $5 to start with, so more than enough for you to work with. And essentially, you can basically just choose what kind of people you want to find. So when you open that up, you'll see here that this is the Leads Finder. Essentially, you'll just basically want to choose everyone that would fit within the scheme of what you're looking for, right? So for the purposes of this tutorial, we're looking for recruiters that might work in the go-to-market space in business development. So essentially, these keywords are being used, these job titles are being used for this. You can choose the industry. Now, industry, in this case, again, since we're looking specifically for recruiters that work for recruitment companies that are looking for jobs on behalf of the job searcher, we're going to be filtering by these keywords. Now, you can do it for a specific industry and maybe people that work for a specific company, maybe in fintech or construction, whatever it is that you're looking for. But for the purposes of this tutorial, it's going to be more for recruiters that work for recruitment companies. And then you basically just hit start. And when you hit start, you will end up getting a run. If you go to your runs here, now you can also set up how much you want to spend. In this case, I set up $1.50 for this one, but when you run it, you'll basically get this export of all these leads that were scraped and gives you a lot of information from the email to the company, their website, their LinkedIn, titles, everything like that, the location that they are in, company description, so on. So very valuable data that you can use. And then what you can do is just export it into either a CSV file or an Excel file, however you wish to do it. In this case, I had created in a Google Sheet that will help me keep track of all my leads here. So the cool thing is that with N8N, you can build an automation that automatically has Apify. You can basically make an HTTP call using a node from HTTP, and you can basically just put in all the information from Apify. They have their API here, so you can actually get that information here. We're not going to go into it in this tutorial just because that's a little bit more complex and a little bit more out of scope for this specific tutorial, but you can set it up in a way where it retrieves certain parameters and runs the tool for you. In this case, I just like to put in the leads into Google Sheets. You'll see that I was able to, after cleaning up the data a little bit and deleting some emails that came back that weren't real, or there were some duplicates and some missing emails, so I cleaned up the data a little bit. But you can see I have, between these four sheets, I have something like 700 to 800 different leads that I can use. And these are all people that I can reach out to see if we would have any sort of mutual interest in, them helping me being able to find a potential career somewhere. So this automation actually splits up the work between different sectors and different jobs. They basically all do the same thing, and this is essentially the core framework that we are going to use. So going into it, we can take a look here. So starting off, we're going to start with a schedule trigger here. This schedule trigger is going to go starting on a Monday, and you can basically select the hour and the minute. For this particular automation, this is going to be for the New York market. So it's going to trigger at 9:38 a.m. I usually just like a little bit past 9 a.m. because 9 a.m. is right when people log in. They'll probably have a lot of emails coming into their inbox. So you can kind of push it a little bit further on to, not be caught in that cluster of morning emails. The first node that we're going to go into here is this get rows node. You can basically just search for it here, go to Google Sheets, and you can just grab get rows. So what happens when you do that is it's going to get all the different leads. You can see here 133 leads that I have for this specific sheet in the spreadsheet that I have. And what's going to happen is it's going to go through this loop. Now, what is this loop doing exactly, right? It's going to take one lead at a time. You can change this batch size if you want, 5, 10, whatever you want. I just like to go one by one to make sure that everything is working correctly. First big node that it goes off of is the date and time check. Now, the important thing to keep track of when you're reaching out to recruiters is reaching out within the time window that makes the most sense on when they're most likely looking at their emails. That's going to be during the day. Usually I like to shoot anywhere between 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. But for your use case, it might maybe you want to do after hours. In this case, it's going to be, we're going to be doing it in a shorter time window. So what's this if node doing? Essentially, you have these different codes that are going to end up spitting out a certain number of results. It's going to be based off of New York time zone, and it's also going to include the time that's happening now and then dividing that time by 60 to show the hour, right? And essentially, we're going to do if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Now, 9.5 is the time. That's going to be 9:30 a.m. And 14 is actually 2 p.m. But 14, we're doing the military time. So you can see that right now, it's a Saturday. It is 2:23 p.m. So it's showing 14.3666, whatever. Well, essentially, that's where you're going to be able to see the time frame of the workday, right? Wherever you want to be able to start. So in my case, since I'm going to be trying to do between 9:30 and 2 p.m., if the time is anywhere outside of that, then this if node is going to go to this wait node. If it is within that time frame, then it's just going to go straight to work. The other piece that we're doing here is for weekends. So I don't want to run this myself during weekends just because people don't always want to check their emails on weekends. Maybe some do, depending on your industry. We can see here that this is the same thing and basically just determines whether or not it's a weekday. And if it's less than or equal to 5, the way that NAN works is 1 through 5 is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and 6 and 7 are Saturday, Sunday. So if it's less than or equal to 5, then that means it's a weekday, and it will determine whether or not it's a weekday. So you can see today's Saturday, the current result is 6, so this node is not going to run today. And we can actually see that working. If we were to do that right now, essentially it's going to check that, right? Ran that, and then you can see that it's basically spit out and went to the wait for business hours. Now, how do I have it set up here in business hours? Essentially, just have this time code. What I would recommend is wherever you are in the region, right? Maybe take a screenshot in this, throw it into your preferred LLM, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, and then just ask your LLM, change this code so that it fits the date and time for me. I want it to be able to fit within these current work hours and not work during the weekends. That's the code that you're essentially going to go in and do. It's just doing a basic calculation. You can, just to go through it, weekday is going to be 5. The days, it's showing 8 days total. It's going to subtract the current weekday value and then determine the time here. So once that, you'll see kind of it spits out, what's going to happen is that today's the 17th. Monday is going to be the 19th, so you can see that the code is coming out correctly. It's going to spit out on Monday the 19th, and this automation is going to start at 9:30 at -5 hours. I think it's GMT. Don't quote me on that, but essentially this is just showing that it's New York time zone. Once that's done, and it's either going through the wait node or it's going through just skipping the wait node completely, this is where you can basically add an attachment to your email. Now, again, this is going to be me reaching out to recruiters, wanting to show them my resume and show them like my background. So I set up this HTTP request node that essentially just goes into Dropbox and pulls out the resume that I saved in Dropbox. So key thing that if you're going to replicate this and also use Dropbox and upload a file into Dropbox, the way that you're going to what you want to do after the fact is every Dropbox share link is going to end with DL equals 0. That means that it's not going to be directly downloadable. It's going to look like that. You're going to want to change the 0 to a 1. And that's going to make that Dropbox link directly downloadable without having to wait. Going through these options, you're going to want to add an option and select the response option. Select include response headers and status. Make sure that the response format is a file, and you can basically just put the output in whichever field you want. This is just essentially, it's my resume, so it's going to take that as one of inputs here, So just show you how that looks. We'll see if it lets us do that. Oh no, it's gonna wait for business hours, so can't show it there, but I'll show you here in a second. So going into the email now, essentially this email is, what's gonna happen is you can add an attachment, and you can see I'm referring to the attachment based off of what I said in the HTTP node. You're going to have this binary value that shows up on the top here, and that's where you're going to want to be able to pull the attachment. It's not going to sit under schema, table, or JSON. It's going to have this fourth value, and you're basically just going to add the name directly, and it'll know how to refer to that. But this is really where the big part goes to, right? When you, again, this Google Sheets has the email availability and the names availability. So this is where you get to, customize your email. At the end of the day, you would basically just pull in when the schema actually produces the results from the Google Sheets. You would want to pull in the email of that person. Whenever, for the sake of example, I always just like to put in my test email to make sure that this workflow is working correctly. So you can see here I've sent out several different test emails to myself just to make sure that the formatting was correct. So you can see here, basically it takes going back into the automation, it takes the name of the person based off of the rows. It's going to take the company name that they come from, and then takes the city market that I'm looking for. Then everything else is kind of just me explaining who I am as an individual. And you can see as a test email, this is a test email that I had right here, brought in the name, brought in the company they work for, the market that I'm looking to apply for, and then gives the rest of the information, including the attachment of my resume here. And essentially what happens finally is it's going to make an update to the row here. What's the update doing? It's essentially just going to update at the very end here that whether or not the email was sent. And if it is, then it's just going to say yes, and it's going to highlight green just for my sake. But you can always, this is a very basic CRM manager for myself. You can add capabilities and add whatever you want to your own, however you wish to do so. And then finally, before the loop ends, there is this other wait node. Now, this wait node is super key and super important when you're building out this automation, because if you don't have experience with sending mass emails to people, Gmail and most sophisticated email providers have blocks to keep people from sending automated messages, because it can go to spam, right? It'll automatically go to spam, and it can actually block your account. So usually the interval is if you send more several emails in more than a 2-minute time frame consistently, then it's going to flag your account. This wait node, what it does is it basically just waits. It shows that you're sending consistent emails, but it'll wait to send to loop around again before sending the next email, just so that you don't get flagged. So you can see that this wait node, I set the wait amount for 3 minutes. And essentially what that's going to do is once it's done for 3 minutes, then next row down. And you can see that when you do that, just as to test, I had sent a couple of these emails. And you can see that it's basically did that. You can see at 1:37 p.m., 1:40, every 3 minutes it was sending a new email. And yeah, essentially that is how this automation works.